Star Spangled Clothing here. I actually kind of had to step back and punt because I made the door a little bit larger than I thought I was supposed to. But the point of these videos isn't to show how good of a carpenter I am, or how accurate I am, or even how good a work I can produce. It's all about showing technique that you could then use to do something with. It's all about using cheap materials, common tools to create good results. So, with that in mind, I did the cutting this morning. I went ahead and cut it down and made it the right size. That looks very much more like the door that I was trying to create to start with. I went ahead and carved out the corners with the knife and chisel, just like I talked about. So I have nice square corners there. Other than that, I glued it just as I discussed doing with waterproof glue. I'm really horrible at gluing, so you didn't want my advice on how to do that. You'd be much better off asking somebody else or watching some other YouTube channel for that information. And it's not that my stuff doesn't stick. My stuff always sticks, but I put a little bit too much on. It kind of gets in places I don't want. I'm not very good at it, even though I've done a lot of it. I usually make up for that by sanding and scraping. But for the purpose of an exterior door, it's actually better to have a little bit too much glue than not enough. But, you know, the dowels are going to do most of the work anyway. So I used Titebond waterproof glue. And that is the project. I'll come home this afternoon and I'll put on the hinges and drill the holes for the doorknob. Then hopefully we'll be hanging this puppy up hopefully this afternoon. I'm also going to build a threshold over there for that door. It's a project in and of itself. So I'm ready to start sanding here. I got out my Black & Decker sander here. Oddly enough, this is a pretty good sander. I've used it for hours on hours and never had a single problem with it. Black & Decker usually makes pretty good products, but in this case is no different, but sometimes I wish I had a different one. So we're going to get started here. My respirator is on loan to somebody else at a different job site, but I still have in my hearing protection.
Right there, that's the absolute worst way to start a sanding project. Never start in the middle of it with a belt sander. Belt sanders are very aggressive. I'm using a Gator Grit 120 belt for this project. As you can see, I had to go get a different one. Typically, the ones that I've used in the past, they tend to stretch before they actually run out of grit. That might possibly be caused by that small wheel at the front of the belt sander there. It's having to wrap pretty tight around that thing and possibly causing quite a bit extra heat. But I can't really do anything with that. The tool is the tool that I have available to me. In the future, I'll probably do a video about belt sanding in general, or just perhaps sanding, teaching how to use different types of sanding tools available. I accidentally deleted, I ran out of video space on my card again, and I accidentally deleted the part where I scraped the door. You can see I have that chisel sitting beside me there. I actually use that to scrape the door with. A lot of people wouldn't use a chisel to scrape glue with because it is kind of a precision tool, and glue is extremely hard. That being said, I know how to sharpen a chisel, so I really don't care. Even if I sharpen that thing 5 million times, it will still outlast me. That tool will be around after I am long gone. It might be a little bit shorter, but it will still be here, and I don't think it'll be that much shorter because I just use a whetstone. I'll also do a video on sharpening the tools that you have, including screwdrivers, chisels, etc. in a later video, and we'll discuss shop tools and etc. But for now, we're just going to kind of finish sanding the door. I am using 120 grit. My technique with the sander is absolutely atrocious. And if this was a stronger grit, you definitely wouldn't want to sand like that. But at any rate, the sanding went pretty good, and here in a second you'll see me sand the edges of the doors. You shouldn't do that. That's not safe. Never do what I do.
Alright, so here's the finished product. Like I I say, the two most important tools that you have as a carpenter are your eyes and your hands. Your eyes will help you see how straight something is. I mean, that is a straight door in all dimensions. I mean, I could go through it, but also your hands. This is a little bit above a paint grade door, is what I would say. You could definitely stain something like that, but especially if you did just a little bit better job. I have dull saw blades, and you can see where it kind of chipped out the edge of the door. That won't matter for painting. But here in a little bit, we're going to go to the house and we're going to install the hinges and the doorknob, and we're going to build a threshold for it. Good morning, YouTube. Star Spangled Clothing here. I've brought the door out to the job site and mounted the hinges. You know, mounting a door is probably the subject for a different video, but for the purposes of this video, I mean, since it had an existing hinge, I just measured down from the top, and that's where I put this hinge. Usually put about a 1/4 inch gap around a door. Of course, not on the side with the hinges, although sometimes it works out that way, which it's kind of supposed to, like it did there. But you know, when you're working with old stuff on the outside of a property, you never know what you got. Obviously this board goes out towards the door in the middle and goes back in. That's not the real problem that I'm going to have. The frame is actually put in there crooked also. But the problem is actually this wall right here. You can see it kind of slants out, and looking at the foundation, I'd say that that's probably original to the house. They had that problem, they built it in there crooked, and they just sort of left it. So I'm gonna have to come up with something creative to fix this gap over here, because that right there is the door jamb back in there, and as you can see, the door is nowhere close to being able to touch it anywhere around there. So we're gonna have to do a part 3 to this series, and then the part 3 I will figure out some creative way to shim that out, because they've actually nailed the siding to it. So just shy of like buying new siding and buying new, this would be a J channel, buying new everything and repositioning it. I mean, this is going to have to be shimmed somehow to hold that water, hold that air, and last hopefully indefinitely. And then I'm also going to have to build a threshold for the bottom of here. I knew that the threshold was a problem. Ideally, you would have just built the door to fit. However, a person would have to build the door frame down, like tie in and build it down. This is patchwork, right? It's patchwork to make a repair of an existing door, which is what the channel is about. If you want to learn how to do new carpentry, we'll cover that eventually. But for now, we're going to talk about patchwork and repair. And when you do patchwork and repair, this is the sort of stuff you run into. By the way, this is just a door that goes to a hot water tank on the outside of a property. But for now, that's the door, and we'll make part 3.